What are we seeing? We're looking at the bedrock foundations of the temple area. South side up, the faint lines are called isobars and show contours of equal elevation. Over the many millennium, the original contours of the Temple Mount have been hidden, and this is due to the natural accretion of soil and also the debris that's filled in the contours for sometimes to the depth of 30 to 40 meters or more. You're right, it's all in the city of David, and I find this face amazing.
The sacrifices were fed to the face. The high priest would go first to the altar, and the altar was likened unto the teeth consuming. The altar would have 4 horns, and they were made of ivory to represent teeth. The altar consumed a sacrifice. The Hebrew word for eat and consume was the same. After that, the high priest would go to the laver, and the laver represented the saliva within the mouth. If he continued on towards the temple, he would be going to the porch, and the Hebrew word for porch was ulam, meaning tongue. Continuing then to the face itself and the representing of the face, we noticed that the cutting brooms still can be seen from satellite imaging. The place where the cutting rooms were made an impression within the soil, and that can still be seen within the satellite imaging, and the cutting rooms were located where the teeth would be of the image. So when the priest would cut up the sacrifices, it would be like the teeth chewing. The true position of the fountain gate was located where the eye of the image was, and Kaholza built the fountain gate. Kaholza's name helps us to understand the beholder of a vision, to look openly and behold and gaze something remarkable, to see a vision. So the eye was supposed to represent the eye of the image of Jacob that was beholding a vision. Hymns, and he also wrote the Song of the Sabbath Sacrifices, and they're meant to go together. The Thanksgiving hymns help us to understand that the teacher is the microprosophis and also the face of Jacob, and also supposed to, according to the Zohar, be the image for the Messiah who was to come. And King David gives words for this face that King David calls Asaph, meaning the gatherer, and that gatherer is this face who is the dumb who will sing
and teach the feeble hands for war. The dumb idol, or face of Jacob, is to teach the saints statutes. The voice is the voice of Jacob. Isaiah says, surely your turning things upside down shall be esteemed as potter's clay. For shall the work say of him who made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him who made it, he had no understanding? When we turn the world upside down, we see the face of Jacob, a face that Isaiah said will not wax pale. And this face is an idol, but it has a purpose. Jeremiah says, let us declare the work of the Lord our God. Jeremiah speaks of other graven images and saying that they are vanity, the work of errors, and in the time of their visitation they shall perish. But he goes on and says, the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. And weapons of war, for with thee I will break in pieces the nations and will destroy kingdoms. In the secret doctrine, there actually are 2 faces. Zohar lets us know that Adam was made in the image of God, that Adam lost to the serpent, and that Jacob wrestled the image back from the serpent. So this is the image of God that Isaiah had foretold. He said, have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits upon the circle of the earth. And this is the idea that this face sits in Jerusalem, where there is the circle of the earth underground, and also a stone. And this commemorates the vision of Jacob. It is the vision of Jacob that is supposed to save Israel. King David speaks of it in the Thanksgiving hymns. He speaks of a creature of clay, a servant, a vision of truth, and a voice to lead the people in the way. The vision of Jacob is that which is to save Israel. In Isaiah, that is the subject. The vision is a sealed book. He's saying, woe unto Ariel, there's coming a war, and talks about the face of Jacob that will not wax pale, and that when the children see it, that they will give honor to the Holy One of Jacob. In the King David speaks of this face as a creature of clay. He says, you did mold out of dust to have consort with things eternal, and given a place in the host of the holy beings, brought it into the communion with the sons of heaven. The face is holding a vision. The word for vision in Isaiah is night vision. In the Thanksgiving hymns, King David speaks of it as a creature of clay. It says, and I, a creature of clay, what am I? Mixed with water, and whom am I counted? What is my strength? He goes on and says, through me you have illuminated the faces of many. Never could flesh alone attain unto these things, nor that which is molded of clay do things so wondrous and so great. He speaks of it as a vessel of clay kneaded with water, a foundation of shame, a spring of filth, a melting pot of iniquity, a structure of sin, a spirit of error, perverted without understanding and terrified by righteous judgments. He speaks of it in the plural and in the singular. In the singular, it is Jacob who had righteous judgment. In the plural, it is Israel who no longer has righteous judgment as the coming war takes place. Here in topic 2, we see it as a servant. The clay image represents the face of Jacob, God's servant. Jacob is called my servant more than any other one person within the Bible, and we understand that this face is supposed to represent Jacob, who is God's servant.
The porch of the temple is where the tongue would be for this image. And porch, actually, the word was ulam, and it means to hold your tongue above and over. This tongue was where the Levites would sing, and they would sing to be the mouth of the image, but the people from Israel would join in the song, and it became the mouth of all. So as King David is speaking in the Thanksgiving hymns, they note that those who translate the Thanksgiving hymns, they note that sometimes it's spoken of in the singular and sometimes in the plural, and that's when all of Israel is supposed to be joining in, so that we would understand that. But these songs were the liturgy that was sung within the temple on the Sabbaths to be the Sabbath sacrifice songs. And as such, this image comes to life as either the face of Jacob or the Messiah, who is describing the things that are before him. The image describes where he's laying. He is in fact laying over the pit of hell. He describes that which he is seeing, which is the vision of Jacob. And he says, before me are stars in their courses and luminaries in their mysteries. This is exceedingly important because the mysteries we're talking about are the mysteries of old, from which the 1 QM War Scroll says it is supposed to be fighting. And within the mysteries have to do with the creation of God himself. As the high priest, as the war is finished, states, who is like thee, O God of Israel, who is able to perform in accordance with thy great works. And his works are mentioned as the earth, as that, O God, you created the earth and the limits of her divisions into the wilderness and plain, and the circle of the sea and the form of man. And these things all go together because there is a form of man, which is the microprosopis or the asaph or the face, and the relationship to this form of man and what it has to say in the Zohar helps us to understand
7 angels within the celestial heavens. And there is a great voice that comes out of the temple. And that great voice, we're supposed to understand, is supposed to be the face of Jacob, the microprosopis, which will be delivering to us the vision of Jacob just in time for the war that is spoken of in the War Scroll. We understand King David caused this vision to be explained of Jacob. It is the vision of Jacob which Isaiah foretold. Isaiah foretold a sign, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as potter's clay. And he spoke of this face, the face of Jacob, which would not wax pale, and said when his children would see it, they would give honor to the Holy One of Jacob, the Holy One being Jesus, but also considered to be connected to the rock that is to be the rock that will save Israel. For it was said that the soul body of the Messiah was in the rock, as it was the rock that saved them as they came out of Egypt. And also, when Jesus spoke as he died, he said, "Into thy hand I commend thy spirit." There is a hand in Jerusalem, a left hand, and this left hand we're supposed to be picturing as holding this rock in the coming war and holding a relationship to the war that is supposed to come.
And also, it is where it's laying, it's mentioned in the Thanksgiving hymns, letting us know that it lays over hell and the pit of hell and all what's going on underneath it. And it holds a relationship to the things that are getting ready to take place. It's letting us know that people will die in a war, that they'll fall in the slime, that there'll be burning and there'll be fire and there'll be all types of things coming to take place, all holding a relationship to these mysteries. And now we need to be able to put these mysteries together and understand what's going on. Because Ezekiel talks about this great army that's supposed to be the dry bones of Ezekiel, and they come to life as there's a great shaking in the land. And if that great shaking can be shown to be the great shaking when the rock of Israel does that which Jesus said, that breaks open the pit of hell, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. When this rock comes to break open the pit of hell, it will also be able to divide the rift of the sea, which is also spoken of here. The circle of the sea is the area of Gilgal, which is down by the Dead Sea. But this whole event, but all of this event is something that can take place in the future, and all of these things are connected. So now we're attempting to look to see how they're connected, and we're beginning to turn our attention to the 7 glorious priests that are spoken of in the Song of the Sabbath Sacrifices that King David wrote of. These 7 glorious priests are within a temple, and they are said to be offering the choicest of offerings. This means that they're offering the Yom Kippur offerings, and we want to see this. How this is done is through a wonderful set of clues. King David tells you that who the priest is, what he's going to sing, and then we have to put together how that which he's singing is aided in his movements and the movements of the temple and integrated into the design that God himself as the creator made. And we must do this while at the same time understanding that the whole story is the story of the sun and the moon and the blessings of the sun and the moon that were to hang from Joseph's head. That as Moses spoke of the war, he talked about the blessings of the sun and moon that would hang from Joseph's head. And we understand that Joseph was Imhotep and was Asclepius and therefore was the builder of the Great Pyramid that was a solar and lunar pyramid based on the design that we're now looking here at. That at the height of the heaven, we're able to see what Jacob said he saw in his vision, an angel come down from heaven. After that, we will see how the angels change garments. And after that, we will see how they will offer offerings. And all of this is part of the vision of Jacob, which is the mystery of old. The vision of Jacob is said to be a mystery. And when that mystery is solved, the code for the Qumran community, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the sealed up information till the time of the end, will be opened for all of us to read.
God said he named the stars, and he called them out by name.
The following is postulated. The teacher is the reader. It is the microprosophist, the face of Jacob. He is singing, using a picture of the heavens themselves as a script. The teacher is the dumb who will sing to teach the feeble hands for war, as spoken in the war scroll. He sings when we place the psalms on his tongue, and King David actually did that. He called him Asaph, made psalms for him, and those psalms were used within the liturgy of the Holy Temple. Those psalms were used within the practice of the Holy Temple and said by the mouth, he was the mouth of all the people outside would sing the songs as well. And what we're trying to find out is, what was the vision of Jacob? How did King David prove this? and show it within a calendaric study that could only be related to the Greek zodiac and their interpretations as well. How this continued on as a study for the Zodakite priests and as information that the Zodakite priests carried and held for the time of the end. The documents that were sealed up until the time of the end left a message that was to call the children of light the end time saints, and it was in agreement with all of these things.
This means that the songs sung by the teacher each Sabbath were part of a heavenly declaration that God designed, i.e., he named the stars and called them out by name. The characters in the scroll are star pictures, first identified through the translation of their names. Then they begin to speak their lines when their star names are revealed and when the psalms given them are revealed. We'll do a comparison showing how the weeks are spoken of in the Song of the Sabbath Sacrifices. It is still speaking of the time when the height of the heavens was in Scorpio and the depth of the heavens was in the star Myra. And this was based on the precession of the equinoxes. That time changes, but that day, frozen in time, appears to be what the day of the Lord is. In fact, in Psalms 118, King David is speaking of this is the day the Lord hath made. It's a frozen day in time, and when we see it, we see the heavenly temple as Jacob had seen it, and it is from this same picture that King David's royal psalms are made, because it's talking about the first Sabbath, and that first Sabbath has to fall in Aries in order for the words that King David gives to apply to Aries. So in this segment, what we're going to do is say some of the words as we're looking at the pictures of the zodiac in those weeks based on the time that this was written, a frozen day and time, speaking of those pictures. And we're going to actually look at the star names and see how they relate to the words that are sung in the Song of the Sabbath Sacrifices as this takes place. So the characters in the scroll are star pictures. They begin to speak their lines and finally become alive to take action as befits their characters, particularly of the 7 priests, which are 7 heroes. And the heroes are delineated. These heroes are part of a heavenly battle which relates to the earth, can be surmised from the Thanksgiving hymns, which says, "The battle of the heavenly heroes shall span the globe." The temple design is described in the below psalm. Sing praises to the mighty God, make the choicest spiritual offering, make the melody in the joy of God, and rejoice among the holy ones through wondrous melodies in everlasting joy. With such songs shall all the foundations of the holy holies offer praise, and the pillars bearing the most exalted abode, even the corners of the temple's structure. This was said in the Song of the Sabbath Sacrifices, and he is telling us that these are priests and that they are in a temple and that they are singing, and that's what we're supposed to be picturing. It all takes place within a solar calendar. Picture the sun as a bouncing ball in its apparent travel. Each week, the apparent path of the sun would bring his light to focus on a different character in the heavenly drama. Although the sun actually stays on the zodiac, each time it would move 10 degrees, it was said to pick up the subject of the starman or star character that followed. In the northern hemisphere, there are 12 constellations. Each has 3 deacons. This allows us to see 48 constellations in the upper hemisphere. Each week would have a song about the specific character and relation to the temple. This worked out well for all the 4-week months. But what about the 5-week months? Since each month had only 4 characters, how could they sing the Sabbath songs on the 5th month? The answer was that one of the 4 characters was given an extra song. This extra honor was given to the 4 corners of the temple. One of the songs in the text explains that the corners do sing. In the Song of Sabbath Sacrifices, it says, "Sing praises to the mighty God, even all the corners of the temple's structure." So we will watch as these songs are given to the characters. We've abbreviated in the next segment, but we will go on and discuss this in depth afterwards. The action, each of the corner characters, the ox, lion, eagle, and man in the celestial sphere will each sing once in his regular role and then receive an extra song in his role as the corner of the temple. That is to say that the corners sing an extra song at their time. So we will watch as we're seeing this in the mighty temple of God.
So what we've seen is that in the first Sabbath, that King David's song is relating to the merciful Lamb, who has loving kindness and is related to eternity and compassion and mercy. Next, on the second Sabbath, the apparent travel of the sun is said to be in Cassiopeia, the royal queen. And here, the statement for the second Sabbath is like unto us looking at Cassiopeia to be us. It says, it's speaking of the heavens, it says they are all honored godlike beings. They tell of his royal splendor. How can we be recounted among them? And the position that we hold within the celestial heavens is the position of the free woman of Cassiopeia, and Peter has talked about this free woman, and he talks also about the good shepherd for the bishop of our sins. He's speaking of the pyramid, and Peter is talking about this later. We'll talk a little bit more about what Peter's doing, that he's talking of this pyramid structure that all of them had gone in to be initiated in, but that we were really the chosen people, the royal people, who were the people that were that were Christians and received this position really to be this free woman or this royal queen. Next, in the apparent travel of the sun on the third Sabbath, it would be in the sea monster. The Song of the Sabbath sacrifices has missing text. Next, the next Sabbath, which would be the fourth Sabbath, the apparent travel would be in Perseus, who is the breaker, and we're hearing powerful warriors for all the rebellious councils. In the fifth Sabbath, the sun would be in Taurus, and Taurus is the judge, and it says, they shall be judged, a voice of tumult, divine spirits in the clouds. Now, Taurus actually gets two songs here because he receives one as a song as a corner and one as a sign. The way that they have broken up the weeks within the Song of the Sabbath sacrifices allows Taurus to have two songs. One as the corner, where you're looking at him as the corner of the temple, and when the sun is in that corner, the opposite corner is seen. That's one of the secrets really of Taurus, that Taurus holds an eye, alderman, which is a bright red color, and that eye is a paranatelion. It's opposing the star that would be on the opposite side of the zodiac, which is in the heart of the scorpion. So when it says they shall be judged, it's those who are of the scorpion, which the scorpion was also to be a symbol of Typhoon, which was death and related to the devil and so forth. So when it says they shall be judged, what the Taurus is seeing with his eye is the arrow that is in the first horseman of the book of Revelation, riding forth conquering and to conquer, which is Sagittarius, and that arrow is aimed at the heart of the scorpion, which is that star is the paranatelion of Taurus's star. What I mean by paranatelion, when the sun was in Taurus, the opposite star would be seen, so you'd see the star within Scorpio. When the sun was in Scorpio, the opposite star would be seen, which you'd see the star within the eye of Taurus. So these were the opposite sides of the theater, and when you're seeing Taurus as the corner, you're looking at the opposite corner to see the judgment, and that voices of tumult, divine spirits in the clouds, because it's talking of the cloud nebula, where you see Ophiuchus is standing in the cloud, and that the Son of Man is also supposed to come in a cloud, and that what we're seeing is this voice of tumult, the voices of war. Akram means war, and those who are coming against Israel are part of that army, and God is saying they will be judged. Next, we're looking at Taurus as the sign. This is his second statement within the Song of the Sabbath sacrifices. He is on the sixth Sabbath, being the speaker again of the judge. And it says, "Bless the God of godlike beings, you who inhabit the highest heaven," and provides then also within this Sabbath you receive the psalms for the princes, who are the seven princes who are ascending and descending within this celestial story. And these seven princes are connected to the vials that are on Taurus's back. Taurus is this beast who offers the vials for the seven princes, and we're seeing that the godlike beings who inhabit the heavens are connected, therefore, to Taurus. Next, the seventh Sabbath would be in Orion, and that he is the glorious prince. And the words of King David are, "Let those who are holy among the godlike sanctify the glorious king." So Orion is standing as a glorious prince, sanctifying the glorious king. It says, "He who sanctifies by his holiness each of his holy ones." And remember, we talked about this one king with the seven within the story of the attack of when Asher is attacking, that we will have 7 men, 7 shepherds, and 8 principal men would be likened unto the one king, who is the glorious king, and these 7 that are with him. And speaking of the king, it says, "He who sanctifies by his holiness each of his holy ones." In other words, this is one man who sevened himself. He is the king. Celestially, we see him as Yehoshua or Yeshua, because there was a man who is likened unto the king. The stars were signs, and he was a sign of the same thing, and his name was Yehoshua or Yeshua. So we're seeing this as the king, and it says, "You princes of praise among all the godlike, praise the God of majestic praise. Surely the glory of his kingdom resides in praiseworthy splendor. Therein are held in praises of the godlike, together with the splendor of his entire realm." And what a statement that is for the glorious prince, for Orion. Next, on the 8th Sabbath, the sun would be in Eridanus, and they hold that there is missing text for that. However, I would question that. That's how they would put it within any of the Song of the Sabbath sacrifices. And the 10th Sabbath, we see what they are saying is the testimony, and I think maybe that this would have been split a little bit for what we're saying. Okay, so in the 9th Sabbath, we see the Good Shepherd. The sun would be in Aruga, and it says, "For wonderful spiritual likeness, uttered holy and engraved, issues of tongue of blessing, the vestibule of their entryways, utterly holy spirits who draw near," then there's space, "eternally. The likeness of the divine beings is carved on the walls by which the king enters." What a statement that is for Aruga, because he is in the entry gate, which is the ascending chamber. The Egyptians called this chamber the Hall of Truth in Darkness, and the man's foot is in that chamber, and darkness means death, and it's a symbol of death. But here this man has raised from the star wonderful. That's the wonderful spiritual likeness of one who's raised from the star wonderful, and he's holy, and there's a tongue of blessing in the vestibule of the entryway, who of the holy spirits who draw near eternally. In the apparent travel, all 3 were supposed to have been raised. Basically, they've all gone through Pleiades from the death and the resurrection to their positions. Perseus raises up. The Aruga we saw as raising to the horns of the bull, and Orion in his regular position, all having been raised from death eternally. The likeness of divine beings carved on the walls by which the king enters, we're seeing that this man who is the shepherd really is the king. He's entering to raise up to be the king in this diagram. And also we're seeing that Perseus too has gone through this eternal passageway and is raising up to be the king. And he's in the chamber of truth in light. And so we're seeing that this man's spirit goes back to God, and that God is the king, but this man also is to be raised up as king. What did it say when it's talking in Zechariah about the man whose name is the branch? Cephas is the king, and his name is the branch. So it also tells you that he's supposed to be a firebrand plucked out of the fire. And we see Orion's holding a branch, and he's the one like onto a branch plucked out of the fire as well, we can see. And so Aruga is the same man, and Ophiuchus is the same man, and so is Perseus. All of these have been raised up and are seen on the wall where the king enters. This is the wall that we're seeing of the this is the wall that we're seeing of the pyramid and the entryway and the point from which the king enters, and here, which the king, in one sense, we might call the concept of the sun being the concept of the king as well, and the sun enters here, going to this point as well. Within Manly Hall's book, we remember that Manly Hall spoke of the man who determined the story that was within the pyramid. When we get to the point of where the sun is supposed to travel to the horns of the bull, it's letting us know that the 7 chambers of the ascending chamber, where it's having 7 chambers, are all supposed to be from the offspring of this light. In a sense, that's the light bridge that these chambers have provided, that this light is the likeness of God's light. As the light of the sun has come up in the horns of the bull, we're supposed to see that sun going through this beautiful star of death that's within Aruga. It would have to go through the chamber of death, and then past that would be this chamber of truth and light, and that would be where the sun translates into 7 parts. The 7 colors of the rainbow are supposedly raised up here. Either you could picture that from the Pleiades, which were the 7 stars, and the covenant being rainbow-like that Perseus raises up here, and here is the idea of the rainbow, or we can picture it as the sun going through death of the death chamber and then raising up, almost like you're having a magnifying glass at the point of the bull's horns, and raising this light up into 7 chambers to be like unto the rainbow. Interesting to note that in relationship to the Good Shepherd, that he was supposed to be upon the horns of the bull that will push at them from the ends of the earth. And here we're seeing that on the horns of the bull is this Good Shepherd with the concept of eternity and being a carved image upon the wall from where the king enters. Next, in the 10th Sabbath, the sun would be in its apparent travel in Gemini, the twins. And here we're reading things that might also connect to Eridanus, and somehow, since there's missing text of Eridanus, I'm wondering if some of this text wasn't supposed to be from the 8th Sabbath, but we can read it in the Gemini twins and their relationship to the Eridanus as well. It says, the fringed edge, the rivers of fire, appearing as flames, beautiful on the veil of the king's innermost sanctum of his presence, and embroidered work, everything is engraved upon divine figures, glory issuing from both sides of them, the veils of the wondrous sanctum. They bless the sides of them, declaring wondrous inside the innermost sanctum. They extol the glorious king with his joyous cry. Here we have to realize that the curtains of the tabernacle had the cherubim located on it, and the Gemini twins were symbols of the cherubim. So they are engraved on the curtain that would be before them of this wondrous sanctum. The Gemini twins are directly next to where Aruga is. Next, on the 11th Sabbath is Lupus, and he is the enemy, and there is missing text. We do want to note that Lupus is located underneath the foot of Orion, and that Orion is supposed to be crushing the head of the enemy. That's an interesting thing for the Jewish wedding feast and bridegroom, because we say the Jewish bridegroom is likened unto Orion, and when the bridegroom steps out of his canopy, they would say, Mazel Tov, good luck today, the one meaning good luck, but then it was Mazel Tov, meaning good constellation. Orion is the good constellation. That's what the bridegroom would say as he would be crushing a crystal glass with his foot. The crystal glass was supposed to represent the enemy, Here we see the enemy under Orion's foot and say, what a good constellation you are, that you're crushing the head of the enemy. Sometimes this is represented here as a hare, but sometimes in the ancient zodiac it was represented as a serpent. And Orion is here we're supposed to see the crystal sea, where basically we have a sea monster and no sea. It's crystal-like, and Orion is crushing the head of the enemy and casting them down into the pit. So that's what we're supposed to see within the constellation Lupus, but the text is missing here. Next is Caneth Major, the glorious prince, and the meaning is the glory of the Song of Sabbaths apply to that, the glory of